Hello there, so listen to this. These are Osu's default hit sounds, utilized in one way or another on just about every ranked map. They're familiar, they're comfy, but they're not perfect. Which is why, along with all the new default skin changes in the replacement future game client Osu Lazer, default hit sounds received an update too. So the big question, are these new hit sounds an improvement? I'd give it a solid, I don't know, maybe. They have pros and cons depending on what you value in hit sounding and how you play Osu, reasons for which I'll attempt explaining here today. There's 3 default sample sets, normal, soft, and drum. Each of those contains 4 main sound samples, a hit normal, which is heard on every object, along with whistle, finish, and clap additions, which can be added atop the hit normal. Here's some comparisons to give you a clearer understanding of what's changed, starting with the normal sample set. Now the soft sample set, and the drum sample set. Aiming for a more punchy set, which are both nice to the ears, but also give instant feedback, something a lot of higher level players require from hit sounds. This is how the intent behind new hit sounds was described on the Lazer development blog, and I think it achieved that goal decently well. It's undeniable that old hit sounds feel like noisy mush when played side by side these new hit sounds with their sharp impacts akin to pro player skins. Gameplay feedback isn't the only purpose of hit sounds though. Quoting myself from this old hit sounding video,
they provide feedback while complementing a song.
And I think those two uses are kind of at odds with each other. See, players don't like the old default hit sounds because they provide terrible feedback. They're blendy and practically inaudible at times compared to ping pong balls and clicky-clacky, whatever these are. That's why most players have custom skin hit sounds overriding the defaults. They just make it easier to accurately play the game. And seemingly in response, the Lazer defaults were made to better suit those players' needs. Mappers, on the other hand, give more attention to that second purpose, complementing a song. Hit sound samples are chosen based on specific instruments in the song being mapped, sometimes through custom samples, but also often focused around built-in default hit sounds. For the same reason why mappers don't hit sound maps with their skin's hit sounds enabled, changing the defaults means a map's hit sounds won't convey what they were initially intended to. Mappers complement music in ways specific to default hit sounds, designing their maps around them, and the introduction of Lazer's new hit sounds is going to mess that up. But how exactly? Changes of any kind could have that line of logic applied to them. For the hit sounds on Lazer now, there's a few things I've found rather weird as a mapper who frequently uses default hit sounds. First, as a general concern, the shift to electronic sounding samples. Rather than being acoustic instruments like hi-hats or cymbals or drums like in the old default skin, Lazer's new hit sounds are more video gamey is how I want to describe them. They're sounds you would hear in electronic music, which works for some maps, but not for most of the ones currently using default samples. Being raw instruments, old default hit sounds are used to complement songs that are also raw instruments. Your average Camellia map doesn't use defaults though. It probably has custom sound samples because the default ones evoke a different mood and don't complement these songs very well. These custom hit sounds are usually strong and, like Lazer's new hit sounds, electronic video gamey sounding. I don't know how to describe them. For the existing library of ranked maps, Lazer essentially gives every ordinary song non-complementary Camellia hit sound samples. The samples themselves aren't bad, but they sound off-putting when paired with the 10 years of maps that expect all default hit sounds to be plain instruments. Some changes to Lazer's individual hit sounds also don't really match the way their old counterpart hit sounds are used by mappers, like the soft finish for example. In my opinion, Lazer's soft finish doesn't really have enough impact. Every map that uses the default soft finish does so to complement climaxes in the music, which the loud whooshing of a cymbal crash expresses perfectly. The new finish lacks that sense because it sounds so similar to other hit sounds in the sample set, and is more focused on instant feedback rather than long-lasting whooshy feedback. That instant feedback also has downsides given how mappers use the soft sample set in maps today. The soft hit normal sample is quiet, really quiet. Without a hit sound addition on top, it can feel practically inaudible a lot of the time, which does suck for gameplay in some circumstances, but is actually useful for others. 3/4 sliders like this express held sounds, so their tails are snapped to no distinct sounds in the music. That means hit sound feedback on them can feel out of place, which is why this mapper chose to change the tails sample set to soft. Feedback is only really present on these ticks, while the soft hit normal blends with the song, and I imagine that's what the mapper intended. With Lazer's hit sounds, however, the soft hit normal has extremely clear feedback. That makes it appear like this slider ends on a distinct sound, ultimately ruining the extended slider hold effect on this and thousands of other maps that use the same technique. This is especially noticeable on all the 1/4 spammy maps out there. When using soft sample set as a base, these maps prioritize additions to give players feedback rather than just hit normals, meaning every clickable object has a distinct hit sound and tails are often left untouched. This makes for feedback representative of important versus unimportant sounds in the old default skin, whereas in the new default skin, that contrast is lost. Every part of an object, even what are supposed to be irrelevant slider ends, now have prominent feedback. Perhaps players find this to be a benefit. It surely does make more sense when everything gives feedback. That's how hitsounds are supposed to work. As a mapper though, I don't think it complements the music as well, and doesn't make for as satisfying gameplay because of that. In lazer, green line volume changes would be the new way to achieve this, which is just a downgrade to 2011. Hit normals overpowering each object may be the reason behind the lack of contrast between all the new lazer defaults actually. Like, one common thing I do is use drum claps and finishes to show pitch changes in drums, like this. Lazer's hit sounds were made to replicate the current defaults to some degree, so its samples also have these bass drum pitch changes. However, the hit normals on each are so powerful that the bass is barely audible. All you really hear is the immediately loud hit normal. Yeah, additions being fogged over like this doesn't really express the same hit sounding ideas nearly as well. And my last complaint, there's some songs that don't really deserve strong, impactful hit sounds. Old default hit sounds were generally quieter and could work overlaid on calm songs like this, while Lazer's hit sounds are a bit too hype. So overall, Lazer's hit sounds are an improvement for one audience, the audience that finds current defaults unbearable because they don't provide distinct enough feedback. For the audience that prefers hit sounds that complement a map though, Lazer's hit sounds lessen the impact of all maps designed around the current defaults. That said, should mappers hit sound their maps differently because of this change? I'd say it's not worth worrying about at the moment. Lazer's hit sounds always have the potential to change, and in current times, when your map will most likely be played, the old defaults are still what most people will be hearing. If you want to be extra safe in knowing that your maps sound good in the current OSU and lazer though, custom samples are the way to go. Not that it even matters when so many people have this enabled. Anyway, that's Lazer's hit sounds for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.